Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to Broadcast to Post, KeyCode Media's series hosting industry professionals discussing broadcast and production technology topics that you care about. We also invite partners to provide brief presentations around their solutions to today's challenges in our industry. I'm Jeff Sangpeel, Chief Technologist here at KeyCode Media. KeyCode Media is an industry-leading systems integrator with a small army of engineers specialized in broadcast, post-production, and audiovisual solutions. If you need equipment, we have it. If you have a complex problem, we've likely solved it. If you need support, our engineers are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In this episode, we wanted to check in with NewTek, and we're diving into the basics of getting up a remote production studio connected with NDI. But first, we're going to chat with a client who's been using NDI and NewTek. Take One Digital was formed in 1992 and has been handling projects for clients from creative through distribution since then. Troy Witt is the president and owner. How have you been? And tell us a little bit more about Take One.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, in these trying times, we've really jumped both feet right into stuff that probably a year ago I would advise clients like, I don't know if we can do that. And I mean, right from week one of the lockdown in California, we were called on by a client in Europe to take their entire two-day symposium virtual. And we had, I think, something like 16 to 20 presenters and thousands of doctors viewing online. So it's been trial by fire, and we've been just jumping through it. And it seems like every week we change the workflow. So yeah, really neat.
Yeah, the world of production has just changed incredibly drastically over the last few months. Let's dive a little deeper into the equipment, cameras, lighting, video switcher. How has each aspect of the production changed to handle remote shows?
Right. Well, now, I mean, you don't have necessarily a camera at the other presenter's location. You're using their laptop camera. You're using whatever protocol. Oftentimes, our client tells us the protocol that we're going to use. So we may say, we'd love to use Zoom, but their corporate office may say, no, you're using Microsoft Teams. Sometimes, though, we have been able to, if we have a single presenter that's presenting, we can use live views technology, or we could use Skype TX. It's also built into the TriCaster, which makes it nice, but it has a much higher bandwidth than we get through like Teams or Zoom, so it looks a lot better. But yeah, we've been having to be really flexible on what we're doing. Now, you're seeing me on our small stage that we've just put together for this, that we can, when it's safe, have one person or two people come present live and have over-the-shoulder graphics, have other Zoom people, and have a total immersive experience in a Zoom meeting with their colleagues. So we're really, playing with that, and that's using Panasonic PTZ cameras to make that happen so that, again, we've got as much social distancing as we can, and it also helps with the labor on that too.
Definitely, yeah. Guest speakers and hosts into production environments are the biggest challenge you can have. And you've already told us how you're connecting the talent into the production switcher. How are you supporting the talent with remote workflows? Yeah,
the talent really, they need to see what's coming back to them right through the Zoom call. So it depends on if many of them are not just a talking head on screen. And that's simple. I mean, if I just want a talking head on screen, I could use any number of protocols and technologies fairly easily. Where it gets much more complex is them presenting slides. And, as we know in all ballrooms, most people are presenting a deck of some kind. So they want to be able to either control their deck locally at their home, so they're doing a screen share with us at the same time as sharing their camera with us. And whether that's via two different devices, one being like maybe their phone is sending video and then their laptop is doing a screen share, or you can do them both through the same device, right? Or what a lot of our clients are doing is they have an ad call that's advancing the slides because the admin knows the deck, and then the presenter only has to worry about giving a good presentation. And so what we're seeing is on a Zoom call, let's say we're seeing multiple windows and we see the slides coming through a different window. So what my advice to anybody that's trying this is have a lot of laptops. Have multiple devices, all with NDI in and out or HDMI in and out to your switcher if you're going to go into a production switcher, and then you're webcasting that back out or you're doing a recording of it, because it seems like we have grabbed every laptop in the office and procured it so that we've got one laptop pinned full screen to that screen share, another laptop pinned full screen to that camera feed. So it's really virtual cameras, and we're making a virtual production. And then when you get into having 4, 8, 16 presenters that are tossing back and forth, it seems that you can't have too many laptops and you can't have too many extra hands of techs in the background that you'll never see, but actually manning those cameras.
Well, and the other thing is just me bouncing back and forth between Zoom and Word following questions. It gets a little difficult to try to run stuff on your own when you're not necessarily skilled in doing that. But NDI seems to be the backbone for a lot of the remote production you're doing. Can you talk about the various NDI tools and how they've helped accomplish getting the show done?
Right. I mean, otherwise we would have a stack of scan converters and devices, and we'd all of a sudden be limited with the number of physical inputs on our machine, right? A TC1 has 4 SDI ins, and all of a sudden we'd be out of inputs pretty good and quick. So NDI has made that much easier, as far as even with like just our PTZ cameras, boom, they're straight in NDI. I've still got my 4 physical inputs available. But the NDI tools of being able to have NDI scan converter, NDI studio monitor, and now NDI virtual camera available within the Zoom environment or any of these platforms, right? The NDI virtual camera shows up in any of the webcam platforms. So boom, you can take the NDI in, which could be program out of our switcher, or it could be ISO of anything that we've designated in the switcher itself. So we can feed back. Like we just had a pre-show meeting this morning with one client that did not want to see program coming back. They were concerned that the executives on the call might get confused because an admin was doing slides. So they didn't want to see those slides ever show up in another window on their Microsoft Teams. So what we're feeding back is actually just the laptop web camera so that they can see the tech on the call. But we have been doing a lot of these where we are feeding back program, and they're seeing maybe a picture-in-picture of them with the slide.
Very cool. So how about something inspiring with all the shows you've been doing remotely? What have been some of the creative ways these folks have continued to make their live experience engaging, with talent, production teams, and audiences all being tied together remotely?
Well, I got to tell you, actually, I had a call at the end of last week with a graduation that's coming up. And so I don't have video to show you of it yet because it hasn't happened. But this is taking a virtual graduation to the next level. So we are webcasting a graduation with the virtual presenters at podiums that are going to present from home. Okay, they're going to be presenting, the dean and the commencement speaker and things like that. But at 2 different points in the show, we're going to have 2 separate Zoom rooms, one filled with faculty and one filled with as many graduates as can get in until it fills up the room and shuts itself off. And they will be getting program fed back into those Zoom rooms. But the entire show is also being webcast. So there's a third viewing platform, right, of mom and dad and grandma and grandpa can watch the webcast. But then these Zoom rooms with hundreds of faculty and hundreds of students in them will be able to, at points in the graduation, we'll say, hey, let's check in with the faculty. Everybody acknowledge and clap for the faculty. And we'll go and see, like you are over my shoulder, you'll see a whole room of 50 and we can page through multiple faculty. And then the students, same thing, they're actually mailing each student their cap and their tassel. And so the students are going to turn their tassel and throw their cap in the air. And it's looking like it'll work. And it's looking like it's going to be a really neat way to do it. Inside the show itself, keeping in mind, we are doing production. So what a lot of people are trying to do live, don't take out the aspect that you can pre-produce things. So we're pre-producing a segment that is what we're calling our virtual stage crossing, and each student's going to get their name read, and a photo that they send in on screen with their name on the bottom. Now, it's a lot of work for a video editor to put that together for 600 students. But you know what? In the budget that they had for doing a live graduation, they got plenty more than what we need to make this production happen. So it's going to make something special. Everybody's going to get their moment in the spotlight. And, we're doing it all virtually in this time for what we have to do.
And I'm always one for, if you can fix it in pre, go ahead and do so.
Right?
A lot easier than trying to fix it in post.
Yeah.
Any advice to production folks who are out there trying to find works during these difficult and remote times?
Yeah. My big advice to every one of them right now is make sure that you're up to date with all the virtual platforms. So if you are not a Zoom ninja by now, get on Zoom, Zoom with your mom, your best friend, whoever you can, and figure out how to make something full screen, figure out how to make something completely hidden from the screen, and become that Zoom ninja or the Microsoft Teams ninja, the more platforms you know. Because what I see coming down the pike is if this is going to be lasting and we're not having ballroom meetings for, let's say, a year, even if we're having small presentations, we're going to have virtual presenters and we're going to be webcasting everything. Every crew is now going to need a virtual presenter jockey that's jockeying the virtual presentation platform and a live webcast person on that. So make sure that you can put yourself out there as the person that can be that in between or assist on that. We've actually had a bunch of our team members already for a major university have been just providing Zoom Ninja help to the professors that are holding classes of 75 people at a time. The professor just wants to get their content across and they're uncomfortable managing the Zoom room as it is. So we're actually having our techs jump into that Zoom room and they help just manage the user management of that for our client. Totally new job that didn't exist 6 weeks ago. So for people that are on-site personnel, otherwise they're camera operators, sound guys, get to understand all this stuff and reach back out to your clients, especially your production companies, once you have this under your belt, and offer your services as the Zoom Ninja, as a virtual camera operator.
Adapt and go forward.
I wanted to bring up too, as far as equipment goes, a lot of these, we've had CEOs and people with subpar cameras show up. And if we know far enough in advance that they're going to be in a show, right, getting them a new webcam right now is a little difficult. You go to Amazon and you look to buy a USB webcam, it's not happening. But the ability to even send somebody a NDI PTZ camera and a laptop to their home in a case with setup instructions that then you can dial into from Zoom and remotely control that entire setup over NDI is a real powerful thing to be able to do. We're just experimenting with that. And I know that there's actually some people out there doing quite a bit more than us with it, but that as well is another tool for users to have of complete NDI remote production. That's
very cool. And some folks who are talent out there aren't the most technically savvy folks. So being able to team viewer in and say, oh, we'll take care of that for you, it makes your worth a heck of a lot better. Well, Troy, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today. It's great to hear about everything you're doing, and wish you guys down there at Take One well.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, and now we're joined by the team from NewTek. I know you've heard about garage bands, but did you know that part of the recent NFL Draft was run on a TriCaster from the TD's Garage? Just as a reminder, questions could be posted in the Vimeo, Facebook, and YouTube comments. How are you folks doing today?
Great. Doing well, thank you.
Great to be here.
Thank you for having us. I'll start it off. My name is Andrew Tockage. I'm the Senior Regional Sales Manager for NewTek. I'm based up here in sunny Seattle. I hope everyone's staying safe and healthy, first off and foremost, during this crisis. As you can see in the background, I'm a bit of a hockey fan and player, and so I'm wishing every day that sports comes back as soon as possible this year. So that's something I'm looking forward to when we kind of dive out of this. You know, when all this happened, a lot of companies, went into the lockdown process, and we were presented with several challenges for remote workflow solutions. And lucky for us, this is something we've been well positioned to provide for some time using NDI tools and our products. I was brought on to help consult some workflow solutions for the NFL Network, for the draft, as well as some of the live shows that they do. And so for anyone who watched the draft, it went off amazingly well. It received incredibly positive feedback, and it kind of gave way to changing, how sports is done, really, and the future of production. So we were lucky to have a power user who works at the NFL Network, John Rydell, kind of help support us and develop workflows, basically out of his garage. And they used almost every product that we used: TriCaster, 3Play, Talk Show, Spark, in different ways. I mean, they used our 3Play not as a instant replay device, but sort of as a playback server. So we're extremely proud of how NDI is making remote production possible, but relatively easy, and also the way that it could be used for small scale at home productions as well. So high end, low end, in between, NDI and remote production, and our product line is well positioned to tackle sort of the workflows of today and the future. So we'll roll a clip that we did on VizRT NewTek TV on kind of how this was done.
Hello and welcome to Sports Week here at VizRT. My name is Chris Black, and we have a huge show for you today. So first, we're going to see how the NFL Network is broadcasting live daily from a garage. Hello, and I'm joined today by John Rydell, who is the Manager of Technical Operations for the NFL Network, and also Dr. Andrew Cross, who's President of R&D for the VizRT Group. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show. So, John, it's great to see you. I saw this LinkedIn post that you made a couple of weeks ago about building this control room in your basement. How in the world did NFL Network move a control room into your basement?
Well, when everything was happening, we were actually going through our free agency week, and things started happening with cutting crews day by day, changing hour by hour. And towards the end of the week, we knew we weren't going to get back into our facility come Monday. We came up with a plan to use some extra gear that we had and to see what I could do as far as helping support the network, supporting our news show. So we brought some gear home, and I started plugging it in and putting it together, and some of the pieces started coming together.
Right. And how long did it take you to get this set up?
It's been an evolving process. First thing, our first plans were to get a switcher in place. I have a TriCaster 8000. We ordered a Talk Show 4000 because initially we thought any of our guests or talent in general was going to come in through Skype.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, Andrew, how are you helping John out with this configuration?
Doing this is, it's easy to take this for granted, but what John has pulled off here is quite amazing. They needed to get streams in over his existing home internet connection. They needed to work out how you make the stream stable, how you make them reliable enough for TV so that you get good audio. John has certainly made it look very easy, but there was a huge amount that went into this and how to do it well. And quite honestly, but it's quite remarkable what him and NFL Networks have pulled off here.
Yeah, this is incredible, the shows that you're doing NFL Now. And how many different sources are you taking from this from remote locations?
Well, right now, the TriCaster 8000 gives me 12 sources. I'm using probably roughly 14, 15. So there's some give and go on guests coming in. It's not, 12 at the same time. But we have anywhere from 3 to 4 talent on a given show, maybe up to 6. And those are coming in through a combination of SRT streams and Skype. We use 2 channels of playback through the 3-play system, 2 channels of VizRT. I'm using my internal DDRs for my technical director wipe effects, and I use one of the DDRs for kind of a backup recorder or an extra playback source. So the system that I'm using is really what I could say is it's busting out the guts. It's maxed out. I'm using it at its full potential.
John uses our products and makes them stronger every day. So he pushes us in a very good way.
Okay, so that was a clip that was produced for us, and they put a lot of hard work into putting that together. So I'm going to share my GUI with you and kind of show you the interface and how some of those things were brought in, creating a live production. This. Okay. Y'all can see my screen, right? How do I get rid of this part? There we go. Okay. So, first of all, as you can see, there are 16 inputs into TC1. And basically, it's the NDI network that allows me to go out and pull these sources into my TriCaster. So I can create or I can pull in sources by coming to my input and coming to my drop-down menu. And now I have a plethora of sources that I can use that are actually sitting on my network. So if I wanted to switch that input to another input, I can change that to my laptop, let's say, which is now looking at a PowerPoint presentation that I can bring in through what we use called Scan Converter, which is part of our NDI tools. And now I can run my entire PowerPoint presentation from my laptop. So that's a powerful tool to use when you're creating something like for a house of worship or corporate production. And then I can go back and I can change that input to a source that I have that is sitting on the other side of my house. I'm actually doing this virtually just like they did at the NFL Network, where my entire set of equipment is sitting on the other side of my house. So like what John did with the NFL, I now have control over my entire system, which is totally in another part of my house. So the way I'm creating this is I have a router and I have actually literally 2 switches that are going to the equipment that's feeding back into my office, into my TriCaster as inputs. So what I did was I put together a little diagram that kind of shows the backplates, how the connectivity is happening, where things are being input from, and we'll get to that as well. But within the TriCaster itself, I also have the ability to bring in 2 Skype TX channels as inputs, which are these 2 Skype TX channels. And then I can run Skype TX into my TriCaster and bring in this kind of situation where I can bring in 2 or 3 callers and I can be talking to them at the same time, and we can be doing this remotely. Again, a lot of what the NFL did was kind of pull something like this off with the TriCaster, where they created these boxes with the talent, and the guests were brought in as well. And so this has a lot of power. You can create something like this using Skype. The TriCaster itself comes with 2 Skype channels. We also have something called the Talk Show, which will allow you to bring another 4 channels in. So then you have 6 channels of Skype that you can bring in and bring callers in. So I also can bring in, hold on one sec, my Skype TX controller, which is, I will bring that up. And This is my Skype TX controller, which I can then go and connect out to. Right now I'm connecting to the TriCaster, and it's receiving that signal, and it says, yes, I'm there and I'm ready to make calls. And so this is how I'm accomplishing doing that as well. So within the TriCaster, I have other very powerful tools as well. I have 2 DDRs. My DDR players can bring in sources, or I can record them back, just as I was doing when I did this. When you guys saw me play this video back, that's my DDR player. That's what I was using to play this back. But I can also
Hello and welcome to Sports Week here at VizArt.
Sorry about that. I can go out to my network and I could pull in sources. I could browse out to my network, pull in video sources as well. I can browse out to attached storage if I wanted to, bring storage in that way, or I could bring clips in that I created in After Effects or Premiere or Avid, as long as they're on my network as well. Okay, back to me. The other part of the tool that we could do is, while we're doing a production, we can stream out. So we have a streaming encoder as well that we can have sources to, like Facebook, Vimeo, YouTube, and I could play out to those while I'm doing my production as well. What I want to do now is I want to run through this video real soon and show you the backplate of the TriCaster Mini and the connectivity of that, and then I'll show you how we do remote production with Chris Burgess, who is literally in New Jersey right now, and he's going to take control of my TriCaster and show you how you can do control of a TriCaster remotely from a distance and have that brought into your production as well. So, play this. So what you're looking at is the TriCaster Mini, okay? So this is the backplate of the Mini, and the backplate of the Mini has 2 GigE ports, and you also have, this is PoE Plus, and these ports are for Mini converters to HDMI. So we're running through this.
So those are the 4 direct connect NDI ports, right, Andy?
4 direct NDI ports, which you go to a GigE LAN, NDI LAN, the GigE house LAN, and this is our new PTZ UHD camera. That's the backplate of it, which will also connect to, now we have the NDI Spark, which, again, if I want to create something, I want to bring a source in that's not NDI, like a camera, I can take my HDMI out, plug it into the Spark Plus, bring it into the GigE LAN, and now I have a camera that's not NDI that is turned into NDI. So wanted to share that with you because that's how simple it is to put together something this quickly and get a production going with TriCaster and Mini TriCaster, those.
And NDI.
NDI. Okay, so we have graphics effects that we can bring in. I can bring in a lower third, and I can change that on the fly by changing our titler. Hopefully I can spell on the fly. And now I have a lower third that I can bring in and take out. Okay. So with that, I'm going to throw this over to Chris, give him control of my machine. Hold on a minute, Chris. You got to ask for control, right, Chris? Yeah,
yep.
There we go.
And so what we're doing right now is we're doing a crossover. As stated earlier, I'm all the way over in New Jersey, and I'm actually going to take control of Andy's machine here. So the graphic setup's in pretty close to real time, and we're actually going to throw Andy over a different video background so we can have like some kind of piece of video content playing underneath them. I'm going to mute this content before we play so it doesn't hit the stream. I apologize, didn't do that before. So we could have Andy on some kind of cool digital background, but I'm controlling this from remote. So if you look over here, I've actually set up these quick little visual macro buttons, and I can actually start to manipulate things. So I can give Andy a title, and I can remove the title, and I can shrink Andy down, like if we were doing some kind of presentation. So this level of easy control is something that we're doing. In our case, we're facilitating this through Microsoft Teams. You can see the Teams interface in the bottom corner over here, which is allows us to give control within our Teams environment. We're doing demos with this live right now to remote users. So I can go back and make Andy big, add his name. These are just some simple features. But the same level of control Andy has locally, I'm able to execute that control on the other side of the country. And our delay is pretty minimal. I mean, I have a slight delay as my mouse is moving from system to system, but this is within a frame of difference. And we're talking about, just about as far as we can go. I'm in Old Bridge, New Jersey, which is on the shore, very close to the shore in New Jersey, and Andy's in LA. I guess I could be in Maine to really give you the full span of the US. But, that's a lot of distance that we're covering in this remote production environment. So Andy wouldn't even have to be at his home facility. He could be out away. Maybe he can't operate for the show for a given space. Maybe he just leaves his machine on 24/7, and we're able to constantly produce content. And that way Andy can actually get some rest, because we know we're all working so hard on this side, making sure that we're teaching you guys and keeping everything up to date with all the new NDI releases. So Andy could take a step away from the machine, and I could still operate. And I have full control over every layer. I made some compositions before to sort of, I made some compositions over here, which we're controlling the ME Andy's in, and then I just let those source presets be here, so I have easy, quick clickable buttons. So I'm not really going deep into the minutia on the TriCaster side. I take some quick screenshots and I'm able to go across. I'm going to actually let go of control now so we can get to some Q&A. I'm assuming we have people in, but this is possible on all the latest Windows 10 systems. So this is all part of NDI and NDI KVM. And we're actually facilitating the transfer of control via Microsoft Teams.
Well, I wanted to do one more piece of this if I can. We'll see if my phone cooperates. But I'm holding my iPhone in my hand, and if my phone cooperates, I can now use my phone as a source because it's on my NDI network. So you're actually seeing behind the magic of everything happening. This is my phone. And once I have that as a source, I can actually use my TriCaster and manipulate it so that my phone, hold on, let me put the source up. Sorry about that. My phone is actually now being used as a PTZ camera.
Right, so take a snapshot, Andy, so you can see some cool stuff. Then you can do some virtual zooms. Right, and then pull all the way out, and then take another snapshot.
Yeah, we'll do that.
And Andy's effectively controlling his phone with the TriCaster. I mean, from a visual perspective, it's all there. This is really slick stuff that we can do underneath the hood that, this all works. And by the way, if you want to get this app, it is free. The app for working in conjunction with TriCasters is always free. And here's the NDI HX camera app.
So with that said, we have tools that go along with the system. They're NDI tools. They're free for download. Okay. And they're down here. And bottom line is download the tools, play with them, see what they can do. We have virtual input. We have studio monitor. We have scan converter. Scan converter is what's allowing me to bring in the power off of my laptop. Studio monitor is allowing you to see what's on my screen right now as far as the GUI for the TriCaster. Virtual input, I'm using that as a virtual camera, as another source that I can bring into the TriCaster. So there's a lot of great tools here to do your production remotely and quickly. Let me put myself back up so you can see me. So there's definitely a lot of tools built within the system that is there for you for live remote production. So Please let me know if you have any questions. We're opening it up to Q&A.
Yep. We already have a stack of questions. Andy, if you want to stop the screen share for a minute. Let's start with Gil. He said, hi, can you talk about bandwidth and NDI, virtual inputs, scan converters, and if there's any way to monitor that? I think you touched on some of it.
You want to take that, Chris, or you want me to take it?
Yeah, so we can talk about general NDI bandwidth stuff. Each source comes in at different, bandwidth is going to be based on what the source content is. So we're looking at anywhere from 100 to 150 meg for your 1080 content, and then about 350 to 425 for 4K content. And then obviously it scales down from there when we go underneath. Monitoring NDI traffic is as simple on a Windows 10 device as opening your network analysis tool, and you'll just see the network traffic that's going through. The beautiful part of what we do with TriCaster, as sort of NewTek is both the creator and we're also pushing the limits on NDI, is we sort of make sure that the TriCaster is always able to handle every piece of NDI content it can. So a TC1 can handle 16 sources, whether they be 4K, 1080, or elsewise, because of what we're doing internally to make sure that networking-wise you have the throughput, and that we don't run into any issues. So logically speaking, at 100 meg, you could ration out that we could probably have 20 sources in a TC1, but we always make sure that we give balances so that you can do very complex effects like what me and Andy were doing. So there's some simple numbers on NDI. All NDI sources are kind of treated equally, so there's no special flavors. The only exception there are NDI-HX sources. So NDI-HX sources do have a variable, a control bitrate that you can set from 5 to 15, so 5, 10, and 15 meg respectively. And so that's a good way where if you have some networking limitations, you can actually constrain what's going on. So Andy's phone app that he was using is an NDI-HX app, and it's an amazing tool when your network is constrained. Maybe you're in an older building or facility. Maybe you're in a current setup at home and you just don't have all your networking gear is old. Well, NDI-HX is that sort of way to enable you to do NDI in your home.
Or if you're running off of 2G wireless from your phone.
Yeah.
Peter had two questions. We're going to combine them kind of into one. Can you talk about sync issues with regards to remote productions and presenters seeing themselves? And then the follow-up was, does the talent see program or themselves?
Sure. So it depends on the setup. The two channels of Skype TX built into the TC1 are defaulted to program. And yes, the talent is going to see themselves delayed when you show them full screen, because that's just sort of the inherent latency going through. Even on this Teams call that I'm on, Skype call and Teams call, we're in a Zoom call. That's just the nature of the piece of content going to you as the production and then me back, or in the instance of the Zoom call, to the Zoom server and then back to me. It's never going to be instantaneous. So what you can do is effectively train your talent into making sure that they're speaking onto what's going on. And when you're in that sort of built-in Skype TX channels, you're always going to be tied to program. However, the beauty of the TalkShow 4000 is that it is both SDI and NDI as a device, so you can give them whatever NDI content you want. So if you wanted to bring somebody in who maybe seeing themselves would be a little bit distracting, you could actually send them a given talent feed. So maybe your host, you just give them your host feed, and now they're always talking to somebody. Their eye contact is always locked, and they'll sort of have a more natural conversation. So for people who aren't as used to this sort of new environment and do need that face to talk to, combining the fact that the TalkShow 4000 does NDI allows you to sort of circumvent what would be maybe a more awkward presentation for them, and now they're just always interacting with something that's live. And last but not least, the underpinnings of all this, NDI does audio as well. So we can give them whatever audio feeds and flavors they want. The two talk show channels that come on TriCasters, those feeds are already pre-mix minused so that the people will never have issues with audio. And then the 4 channels in talk show, you can do individual mix minuses for them if you're working in an analog studio. So you need a nice mixing board for that. But in an NDI environment with the TriCaster, you can actually give them just a single mix out and configure it so that there will never be an issue with audio. So you get lots of different ways to tackle these problems in this NDI ecosystem.
Well, talking about the audio there was another question from production company. Does each caller need an aux bus for a mix minus? I use the 860 3 aux and Mini 3 aux.
No, you wouldn't. With a talk show, you could just give them a single aux mix. You're going to need 4 channels of audio minimum to do this. But you can effectively do this by setting up the aux mixes so that on each different strand of audio, you just sort of remove the caller from their strand. So if caller one, you don't have caller one's audio on strand one, and you can put everyone else's audio on strand one, and now you're sort of creating this mix minus effect for them to hear. And then in the talk show interface, you just sort of mute the channels that would have their content in them and leave their own channel open, and you'll create this mix minus. That might be a little confusing, but effectively you can use the aux router to remove themselves and sending that single feedback you could go through. Only in a physical space, if you're working with, if you weren't working with one of our NewTek switchers, or if you were working in NDI environment, then you'll have to go to a larger mix bus in the physical audio space and have something that can do multiple aux mixes.
Very cool. Question from Jay Morau. Can you talk about latency issues using several remote NDI cameras and switching at a central hub?
Sure. This is all dependent upon what the NDI camera is. So as we speak, there are a large variety of NDI cameras. There are HX1 cameras, HX2 cameras, and then there are full bandwidth NDI cameras. We make some of them. We have a bunch of people in that space who all sort of contribute at different levels. The initial rush of NDI cameras were all HX1. Reasons for that are technologically and elsewise. Those cameras, only on the first switch on contemporary hardware builds, you're going to notice a slight delay, and that's just due to networking occasionally. Once you've gotten past that, the inherent delay, it's minor, I would say, HX1 stuff. It's maybe a little over a frame of difference, so that's delay and inherent. But the trade-off between that delay versus the IP compression ratio, you're getting a lot more out of a lot less. HX2 devices and full NDI devices are effectively 10 milliseconds. They're unnoticeable delay to the naked eye. And so those are other options if you want to work in sort of complex environments. But in general, for these kinds of web environment productions, the delay on an HX camera is just negligible. It wouldn't be noticed. If anything, you're going to get more issues in having sync going into like the web space, the digital space. And the beauty of it is that once you sync NDI audio and video, that will maintain sync through. So once we've sort of gotten that right, let's just say we have all the audio going with our camera feed. Well, that's just going to be tied together the entire pipeline as long as you're bringing it through NDI.
Very cool. James had a question, which actually I think I'm going to have to field. Are you sending this live master feed that we are seeing through Zoom on this, or is this Zoom call live mixed through NewTek TC1 and streamed out? I didn't see the remote, the Zoom feed inputs in the TC1 when you were reviewing the software share screen earlier. So Chris and Andy both have TriCasters at their locations. However, they're coming back to KeyCode's office here in Burbank as a Zoom feed. So our output to the world is via Zoom. So it's not through a TriCaster here, but there are two TriCasters involved with the whole process.
Actually, there's one TriCaster.
One TriCaster, that's right.
One TriCaster did the heavy lifting, and then Chris took control of my TriCaster here in Los Angeles. Yeah.
So one TriCaster for the price of, no, two TriCasters for the, so going on to the next question, people were wondering about comms. How do they integrate with NDI?
So yeah, this is it's an audio feed, right? You tackle this as you need to. You ingest it into NDI in some capacity. You're going to have some device that's going to cross over, and you can treat it that way. I actually see lots of people doing really cool stuff with multiple VoIP, multiple of these chat methodologies. So Zoom and Teams and things like that. In an NDI environment, we really don't care between Skype, Teams, or Zoom, right? It's just an NDI feed. So you can almost establish like your own internal production comm line by having a bunch of people on a Zoom call, and that could be your production team. With virtual input, you could give them the content like Andy was doing earlier. And so everyone in your production team could be seeing content and be collaborating there. And all you have to do is remove that feed from the master line. And now, you can have an entire talk channel that the home viewer never sees, but you in the production facility could use. So you can get really creative in the current space. I think, if anything, these options have grown. When we talk about physical productions, we're so used to using these hardware devices that, are lines, and they don't necessarily play as well in the IP space. So in the traditional sense, you get that audio into NDI, and now you have that line that you can share through. in the contemporary space, I think you've gained a lot of options. And the fact that it's as easy as NDI tools, which is free, you can very much work with this stuff. And and if I were to throw my own little 2 cents in here, have 1 or 2 Windows 10 machines in the facility, because I know lots of people like to work on Mac, but 1 of the 2 of those would go a long way into getting a full set of NDI tools that could be super useful for your productions.
Awesome. Question from Steve and from another guest. How do I control my TC1 from a remote location? What are the details on that?
Well, the way we were doing it was we were doing it through Teams. And so Chris asked for control, and I gave him control of my machine. And so he was doing it virtually that way because I gave him control of. And
Andy, and on your side, how did you pass over the control? What on your side specifically are you doing? You're running what piece of gear and what piece of software?
I'm running the TriCaster, right? Running Studio Monitor.
Yep.
I'm running virtual input,
right,
as well.
And so, what is Studio Monitor doing all this?
Studio Monitor is basically acting as my GUI for the TriCaster.
And we give a virtual KVM in Studio Monitor for the Windows 10 machines. So that's the TC1, the TriCaster 4K Mini, the VMC. So those 2 pieces together are sort of what are the 2 pieces that you need in order to just enable this. You need KVM, which allows you to do software control, and then you need some kind of methodology to get it over. We used some tools like Zoom, or excuse me, in this case, Teams, to get something across, but any screen share software at that point could get it done. We like to use Teams because we do it a lot for our own demos, and it just shows really well. We obviously do a lot of work with Microsoft to do first-party partnerships on the talk show, but whatever software mechanism you want to do for screen share could be usable. And then as long as you take some smart precautions from your production side, you can present an easier set of controls. When I was doing control of Andy's system, while I could go through and switch the entire show if I wanted to, it's just easier using macros and compositions to just make it so that your show is much more easy to execute, and there'll be less issues with like, okay, well, I have to go and dig through, make this effect happen. If I can make a macro and a composition, I've just eliminated all the hard work, and I can even hand this to somebody who isn't as skilled in the system and just say, "Hey, hit buttons 1 through 6, and that'll take care of all your work." We also do this in Live Panel as well. Same concept applies for Live Panel. You need a screen share app from the local sort of studio hub, and then they can take control of Live Panel, which is a web page driven device. We showed it a little bit in the video.
Okay.
Yeah, Jeff, we do have a document that is about 7 or 8 pages. And it's basically telling you, sort of how to operate a TriCaster remotely. So, we could find that and send that out as a link as well.
Definitely. So those who needed that, please reach out to us. We'll get that over to you afterwards. GCSAA TV, it's really more a statement than a question. Zoom has a lot of security issues before I depend upon it for anything like you're saying. So many other tools aren't so vulnerable. Their integration's great, but they need to work to back up that security before we can rely on them. I do know that that's not relevant for us, but they did just come out with an update yesterday, and if you don't install it by May 30th, you're not getting on Zoom calls. It changes the entire security platform.
But yeah, so we don't have to work with Zoom either, right? Like that's Teams, Skype, Hangouts, if you could get Hangouts working, WebEx, whatever. We're agnostic in that sense. While we are big proponents of the Skype TX platform, like we understand that there's going to be tools that are outside of stuff that we build, and that's why we do so much to make NDI tools free and just malleable. The virtual input that Andy has talked about actually can just do an auto detect feature, so it can turn any piece of NDI content into any video frame rate that these sort of weird systems use, because they don't actually use traditional video frame rates, but you can then jam NDI into these things so easily. So it's really useful, and we do so much development on the free side to make sure that, if you're not a fan of Zoom, whatever flavor of software that you like to use, we'll work with it.
Very cool. There was one quick question. Do you have a way to also capture a local recording? What if network connectivity drops?
Yeah, so we can do local records on TriCasters. Most systems by default can do up to 4 records locally. In NDI 4, which came out quite a few months ago now, we allowed you to just record any NDI source as long as we have a destination. And that's where, working with a partner like Keycode really comes into play. We have this new NRS storage solution. So if you really want to record a large scale of NDI feeds, well, talk to the guys at Keycode because they can get you set up with something that could capture, 16 channels of NDI, which might be really tough in your current environment. But you're going to get these calls, you're going to get to scale. And as a production organization, and when you show these high quality abilities with things like Skype TX, you kind of shift the dynamic a little bit because, well, now the video quality is there. Now the latency is gone. Now the audio sounds pristine. Well, we want to do more. Well, actually, we want to capture. Actually, you know what? The new paradigm is we want to just do this all the time because this is so good. Well, now you work with a great partner like the guys at Keycode and you say, hey, guys, we need to capture a lot of NDI sources. And sure enough, we have solutions for that. But in the interim, NDI tools, and then you can get an extra record on a laptop or something like that. And that'll sort of patch things over to get something started. And, that's the beautiful part of NewTek. We're giving you the free roads in and also making sure you have something that you can get to that is at a professional business scale level.
Awesome. CP and Jim have some questions about production while you're in production. While your show is live, can you preview the next guest to check audio levels and video before taking the guest live? And by preview, I mean, can a producer talk to the next guest via an IFB? And then Jim's question was, what about tally in remote production?
All of the above. Yes. So if I could share my screen again.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris can help talk through this. But
I'll walk you through it. So Andy's going to pull up the audio mixer. And when you look at the talk show channels, they have a talk feature. There's a little talk button on. And so if you had a headset hooked up, someone could literally talk directly to the end user on the other side. So if you look all the way at the bottom of the UI, most tracks we have solos on the different audios. But on that Skype input where it has a little S, you can see the talk all the way at the bottom underneath the fader that lets you go. And if you push that button down, you're talking through to the Skype user, but that audio doesn't cross over or bleed into the production. So they could hear something like, oh, hey, could you turn the blind down because it's a little bright? Also, you could always just impact their image on your side. So you could have IFB effectively going through that methodology. Again, you just get it into NDI and you can get that talk channel to them. I forget, what was the other piece of the scenario?
Tally.
Oh, tally. Okay. So Skype TX callers do know when they are live. Their side will, on their interface, they'll get a little live pip. So that helps them out. And within the NDI ecosystem, we're always sharing tally across. So if I was controlling multiple of Andy's devices, let's just say Andy set up his entire system via Teams in this instance for control, NDI is always telling when a source is going live. And so you can actually see right now that there's a red outline around Andy's input channel, and that input, the input 6 has the red and green box outline. So that's NDI tally that's going across in the UI. So little things like that are constantly being pushed via NDI. So within the ecosystems, we're pushing that all along. So yeah, you get tally information, your talent gets tally information, and you can talk directly to remote talent via Skype TX. Other platforms, unfortunately, our partnership only extends to the Skype TX stuff. So I don't have a good solution for anything that isn't that. I have not heard of anything, unfortunately, successfully in the field outside of calling them and muting them.
Yeah. So I can actually, see my next person on preview, talk to them, get them ready down here in my preview bus. So if that was the other channel of Skype, I could be preparing them. Okay. So hopefully that answers the question. I'll stop sharing now.
I think so. So let's see. I'm gonna mangle this. Ken Telecki is wondering, how can you replay automatically 2 to 3 cameras, more than one, auto mix, and after playing go back to live? So it sounds like it's a replay kind of question.
That is directly in the wheelhouse of a 3-play. The 3-play gives you the ability to cut through angles. You can do a limited version of this in the TriCaster, but I think you'd have to be really good at getting your macros and setups correct. But in the 3-play on the physical operation of the box, there's literally an angles button So you could take a given piece of replay content where you're, let's say, looking at angle one, and I'm going to use this from a sports perspective, but it applies outside of that context, and say, okay, well, I'm looking, let's say at baseball, I'm looking at home plate on the batter, and when he's about to crack the home run, and like I'm going to watch the ball zip through. Once the bat makes contact with the ball, I can cut the camera through, which may be my camera that's going to follow as it goes up. In a more contemporary sense, because no one's playing anything outside, in your esports environment, you could have different pieces of content. Or if you were just recording multiple different sources of NDI footage, you could go through and maybe you could see someone in a tech environment maybe just makes a gigantic announcement, and you have all these people on a Zoom call or Teams call or whatever. You could maybe replay some of their reactions and just be like, oh, hey, we're going to drop, we're talking about, let's just say, the next piece of NewTek development, which we don't really do. And we could just shock the crowd and say, oh, hey, here's the next thing, bam. And then you could replay and say, here's people's reactions to the new piece of technology. So those are ways you can achieve that kind of stuff.
Very cool. There's a couple quick questions here. Is the Spark NDI or NDI HX?
There was a version of the Spark that was HX. All of the current Sparks are NDI.
Awesome. If I want to put a TriCaster in a small studio with the talent, how much fan noise does it make?
The TriCaster Mini is very inaudible, I would say. It is very quiet. The TC ones have 4 fans, but you have noise gates on all of your inputs, so you can reduce the fan noise, the audio level. As for instance, my TriCaster is as close to my microphone as I am, and I don't think you guys are hearing the noise. You might hear the noise from my actual computer, which is closer to my microphone than I am, but those noise gates and smart audio can help you achieve that. The TriCaster Mini, I think if you're getting to I want to put a system in front of one of my clients, I think that's the right move, just because of the cool design, lightweight, portable, travels well.
And my experience with fans and equipment in general is they're temperature sensitive. So the cooler you have the space, the less the fan will run. So bring it down to about 63 degrees. Talent will shiver, but no one's going to hear anything. Let's see here. Can you talk about Access Manager and its uses? Does it allow NDI connection across different networks?
Typically, no. We talk about NDI Access Manager and configuring things in different subnets. So we'll take that. If you take that logic and you're a networking person, well, technically, if you had an open and available networking port, something that someone from the outside world could access, and I don't recommend this, but this is a possibility, right? So I'll just put the big disclaimer, this is not something that we go through, but you could. Then technically you could hop over the public network, but the issue is going to be bandwidth, right? We just talked about an NDI source being 100 meg of bandwidth. Most people's home internet connections aren't that stable, aren't that fast. So what we'd actually suggest is working with one of the NDI third-party tools. So there are a bunch of third parties that support NDI. Off the top of my head, I can reference Bird Dog has an NDI cloud. Sienna has some NDI cloud technology, as well as MediaLux. Personally speaking, I've done the most work with the MediaLux stuff, but I know all 3 of them sort of tackle the better idea of, well, we'll use this tool to then bridge our NDI connections over the WAN. Because once you're in the public internet, you're sort of at the whims of the public internet. You don't go over the fastest line between 2 points. You're the most available. So that connection that me and Andy had could have been way worse depending on the methodologies we chose. But using these other third-party NDI tools will definitively make you, it'll be shocking how good those developments are, and they'll do the connectivity for you.
Okay, we got 2 quick yes or no questions and then a longer question. Can we have the switcher board at a remote location?
And do control over the KVM? No.
Okay. Full NDI?
Well, I mean, technically, you can have the switcher board in a different location because you're using that as Ethernet.
But you'd have to have a network, not over the public network. Over some kind of privatized network, you could do this.
Yeah, VPN probably would do that for you.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to do a little bit of extra work behind the scenes.
Yep. Full NDI and NDI HX, can they be mixed in TC1 and synchronized?
Yes. Sync is going to be dependent upon whatever latency hops are going through. So, like, for instance, if there's something weird going on in your networking that's causing that HX source to just be delayed, you could then set video delays on all your other NDI sources. We have audio and video delays that you could trigger in. But in general, all of the contemporary NDI HX2 stuff and the pure NDI stuff is almost indistinguishable. So working with contemporary gear is probably you're not even going to need to go through those steps.
Okay. And then from Pixel Flick TV, as a local San Francisco Bay Area sports TD, how does this system work with backup clocks and frame rate lip sync issues?
So yeah, if you're having a frame rate lip sync issue, you can just dial it in. Right, we have audio delay, video delay, so if you're having some weird funky issue with that, you can time it and get it right. Delay in audio is always a beast to handle. That's because human ears are not generally synced the same. So you could have 3 people listen to a clip and watch a clip, and everyone kind of give you different answers of before, after, or in sync. But we give you the tools to get it about as close as you can. And backup clock, I'm assuming he's meaning scorekeeping clocks and things like that. So we use a data link protocol to feed graphics. Andy punched in his name, but you can actually use the % symbol to open up a bunch of commands. And as long as you can get that data link, that clock feed or those scoreboard feeds into something that the data link can analyze, it'll just automatically feed the information. The thing that we normally see there, this is a much broader question, is do we want to embed the clock on our replay for officiating purposes? And for that, talk to the guys at KeyCode, and we'll give you the pipeline and workflow to do that.
That sounds good. One last quick question. Is a 10 gig network card on your PC required when running more than 3 NDI feeds from your switch?
On your computer, you can produce more than that. It depends on where you're going. So going to your TriCaster, you're going to get your best NDI performance. If you're not going to a TriCaster for NDI and you're going off of your computer, you may need a 10 gig card to achieve more sources, but you will get better performance. You will get the best NDI performance. What we say is valid. The systems there's no magic. We have 2 1 gig ports and a TC1, you get all 16 sources in there. So it is not required when you're working with the TriCaster environment. In other NDI environments, you may see that there is the need to have a larger amount of network connection. All of this is also contingent upon the content, right? NDI actually is resolution and aspect ratio independent. It doesn't actually care. So like on my home gaming PC, I can play games at 144 hertz and I can still ingest it into NDI into my TriCaster. So like keep in mind that there's other pieces at play here when we're doing that kind of stuff.
Right. Very cool. So my apologies to Matt Damon, but we're out of time. If you have production needs that NewTek and NDI might help make possible for you, please reach out to us here at KeyCode Media. Thanks to Andrew, Andy, and Chris from NewTek for joining us on Broadcast to Post today. Everyone stay safe out there. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.